Romantic obsession with someone you can't have is a sneaky, life-wrecking toxin, almost a drug that feels great at first and then seems like if you could just have that person, your life would go from really, really empty to totally amazing. But notice I said drug. The drug treats pain and the drug wears off. And next thing you know, the solution that you found has just swept like a massive mudslide through everything good in your life. Can it ever be true that this one person you wanted but lost is the missing element in your life that explains why you've been so sad for so long? Maybe, if you know the signs. My letter today is from a man I'll call Ed, and he writes, "Hello, Anna. Am I stuck in a CPTSD trauma bond mixed with limerence? I grew up as an only child. My mother was an alcoholic, and it was not a healthy environment for obvious reasons." All right, I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things that I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's go through Ed's letter and see what's going on. I was emotionally neglected, spent most of my time alone, and it was hard to make or keep friends. My parents divorced the first time when I was 7 and then remarried. They divorced again when I was 18. I dropped out of high school my sophomore year due to my home life. Both parents agreed to let me drop out, but later obtained a GED. I've never done drugs or alcohol, believe it or not, on a positive note. At 16, going on 17, I met my first love, to whom I lost my virginity. She was introduced to me because she wanted a nice guy, instead of the bad guys she had been with many times before. Okay. She also had a troubled past before I came into her life from an abusive mother. I treated her like gold and did everything I could to keep her happy. I didn't want to lose her as she was the most significant person ever in my entire life. I became her doormat, used in many ways, and I was constantly worried with anxiety that she might cheat or treat me poorly or leave. Close to a year later, she broke up with me as she wanted to go out and have fun, drink, drugs, party. I didn't do any of that. That breakup absolutely destroyed me. I wanted to die. I couldn't move. I was so angry and screamed and cried so much. I felt so worthless I couldn't hold on to what meant the most to me. And to this day, I struggle with many aspects of it, including sexual trauma. I'm not sure what you mean about that. I'm not sure you went and you explained what that is, but okay. One other girlfriend was a mistake. She cheated on me. And a year later, I met my now wife of 25 years. She's the nicest, most supportive person. I married unhealed and way too early, and I was afraid to lose her because of the past. I sold myself to her as something more than I was. I feel it was just to keep her, and she was stability. She was a means for survival, I've only now come to realize. I love her as a friend, the mother of my children, but the chemistry and connection and attraction isn't there and has never been like it was with my first girlfriend. Maybe I'm still confused with what love really is. I've often thought of my ex throughout our marriage. I've never been able to shake my feelings towards her. I've never been able to provide the emotional needs for my wife that I did for my ex-girlfriend. I've always felt a disconnect, me to her. Before she was pregnant with our first child, I knew something wasn't right and started questioning the marriage to myself. But in less than a year, we were pregnant and had 2 fantastic children, now both adults. I wasn't going to leave the marriage because I didn't want them to go through a divorce like I did at an early age. But I've not been happy, and my wife senses it and has said she's waiting for the day that I announce that I'm leaving. But she remains by my side, knowing that's a possibility. Wow, okay. I reunited with my first love a year ago after 30 years. She is married with adult children. I met up with her to find closure, mistake, suggested by a previous therapist. What? I'm going to say something about that. Okay. My wife was aware of the meeting, hoping it would help the situation I found myself in, with a recent nervous breakdown at work resulting in job loss, but with disability. I have schizoaffective disorder, depression, anxiety, PTSD, and I have no friends. That is a lot. The ex-girlfriend and I connected. She apologized for the past. We became Facebook friends. She invited me into a group she started that we both shared interest in. From this point, it has been an anxiety, tear-filled, up and down, emotional roller coaster of mixed emotions and signals leading to emotional distress for me, my ex, and my wife. No physical infidelity ever took place, but definitely an emotional one. I would live by my phone waiting for my ex to call, text, message, or even for a like or a heart response on a post. I would make in the group chat just to feel acknowledged by her and heartbroken when she didn't. Yeah, this is limerence, all right. I'd meet up to help the group with her feeling used a lot of times, but continued to pursue her. She eventually expressed mutual feelings for me. For the sake of time and length of story, we are still communicating, not as much. I'm no longer part of this group, but I can't stop thinking of her, and I'm so sad that I wasn't good enough for her when we were young, as she was who I wanted to be with. I try to remind myself of the bad things that I avoided by not being with her and the good things I have, but I'm still tortured by it all. Is this a mix of trauma bonding, limerence, unhappiness, and a mental health issue all wrapped up in one that keeps me from stopping this misery? Should ex-romantic partners be friends if each are married to someone else? How do I let go? Go no contact even though I feel I've lost her for good? Should I divulge my true feelings to my wife about my ex-girlfriend even though I may not understand them? Are these feelings just based on past trauma bond emotions and not real ones? Thank you so much for your videos and your time and consideration of this letter. Okay, Ed, I'm so glad you wrote. And I think I can help. This is so heavy. I'm so sorry about all of this. With your childhood and what happened with your first romance, you said that you thought that you lost her because you weren't good enough. All right, what were you, 16, 17? And it's not about that. What I heard here is that you were the nice guy. She had always been with bad guys. She had a nice guy. And what is really normal, which is happening for you right now, in fact, you're having it too, is when people don't have unhealed trauma, and sometimes just people get this, it's just human, is that if somebody really loves you and is good to you, you don't feel attracted romantically or sexually. And so you get that friend feeling and you think, no, I really got to go pursue the people who jerk me around and who dumped me before. That's what you're doing now, and that's what she did before. And you're doing it to your wife, not because she's not good enough, it's because you have a feeling that there's something you're missing out on, and you believe, rightly or wrongly, that if you could be with this woman from the past, you would be fulfilled. And I don't immediately discard the possibility that you're right. It's possible, but I think it's unlikely. Here's what I hear, Ed, that I think is one really big marker of why whatever you feel about women has spin on it. You have no friends. You said you have no friends, and you've got these diagnoses, and some of them are pretty serious, and you have no friends. So if somebody is really struggling with mental health and has no friends, they have one friend, their wife of 25 years, who's totally stood by them, but they're like, this doesn't give me that feeling I want, and you want to go back to the past, to somebody you felt strongly about in your teens. I do understand that, but what you are talking about is limerence. And trauma bond, you're not in a trauma bond right now, as far as I know. I don't know, you didn't explain, why are you guys seeing less of each other now? Was that her? Is she totally prepared to leave her marriage for you, as you seem to be for her? You weren't clear whether you had that conversation, and I just think if that was clear, you would have mentioned it in your letter. It sounds to me like she enjoyed the energy of the whole thing, and she shut it down. That's my guess. I have to guess, because you didn't tell me. But I don't think you would have shut it down, and I don't think that I just think you would tell me if you had both said, I want to leave my spouse for you. You would have said something to me, and the question would have been more about the logistics of that, but it's not. The stuff you're asking me, you said you thought you had lost her forever. So I think what it is, these high school reunion things, they're notorious. A lot of people will get hooked in to somebody they had strong feelings for, and they're a little bit of an archetype of like great expectations and terrible disappointment, because of that very thing, that there were strong feelings in teens before. When we were young, before we ever got our hearts broken, we didn't have so much fear. We just didn't have so much fear that if we would open our hearts to somebody, we were going to get burned and discarded or shut down and abandoned. So there was no fear there. There was an abandon to the level of love that we were able to receive and give that was wild. But here you are now. You're however old you are. There's all this water under the bridge. And I don't think there's any way that you would feel great with her. And the big barometer for that, I always remind people, is, well, how do you feel? How do you feel? So you've had this kind of like emotional affair going on the side for a while. That's the word for it. And you're miserable. You're totally miserable. It's up and down, roller coaster, depressed, sad. What did you say? You're so afraid to lose her. So that's not what a good relationship feels like. You need to know the signs that something is actually legitimate. I do think it's possible for people, because of circumstances or trauma or whatever, to have made a poor decision in their original choice of spouse, and that there really is something much more suitable and appropriate that would enliven them and support them, and they would feel understood. That is always a possibility. And it wouldn't be out of the realm of realistic thinking that if there was such a relationship like that, that the right thing to do would set the whole situation right by being with the other spouse. And I guess a popular example of this would be King Charles and Camilla. They didn't get married the first time. Tragedy ensued. Now they're married. They seem to be a very, very married couple. And so they ended up doing the right thing by themselves. But as we know, they hurt other people. They hurt their existing spouses a great deal. Perhaps it was the best thing to do. That's a moral judgment that we can refrain from. But I'm just saying there are examples out there of, where this happens and it turns out for the best. And with you, the fact that you're miserable, that you have to be so scared of whether she cares, that's not a relationship that is promising. That's not it. When you really have a great relationship, and if it were an emotional affair or a friendship on the side, it would still have signs of marriage, which are that this person can be with you, will be with you. That sounds like that's missing. That they cause you to get up at a higher level. They cause you to be a better version of yourself. So the minute you're sneaking around on your wife, there's a big dent in that. But let's just say that your real nature was, I just have to grab something out of the air here. You're going to create this great organization that's going to make sure the whole world has food. So that would, and in the past, you just had some desk job that was meaningless and nobody cared who you were. And that when you're with this person, that's who you become and you start doing this thing. See, that's the sign. I sort of made a grandiose one. So you don't have to save the whole world for it to be a sign, but you become a much more fruitful and better version of yourself and a more moral version of yourself. And there's a peace there. You feel like they get you. And so from all this furtive texting and stuff, it's hard to say whether somebody got you. As human beings, we are so vulnerable to kind of put a watercolor wash over things when we need to. And texting is one of those things that's you can really put a lot of wash on it. It can, how the meaning changes. Have you ever had people get very hurt by something you said by text and they totally misunderstood where you were coming from? But same thing with romantic stuff. It's not a good way. Real love that would last comes through time together. And so when you have a relationship that's a lie, you can't really have that time together. It sounds like you're not willing to end your marriage just because you're not happy there. It sounds like you've thought about it, but you're not willing to do it. And I always think that it's kind of a terrible dilemma if you set it up like, I will only leave this marriage I think is no good if somebody else comes along and wants me, instead of going by how you really feel. And as I say that, I also completely understand that choosing to be alone in this lonely world is a terrible thing. But I'm just thinking about how your wife feels being your fallback plan. That must feel really bad. You're not likely to get the best out of her, the most shining version of her, when she senses and knows through conversations that you don't feel great about her, that there's always a threat that you're going to leave. Now, some people will say, this therapist who told you that you needed to go get closure, I'm so sorry they told you that. I guess you know from me, there's no such thing as closure. What closure is you don't have contact anymore. You stay with what you chose for your life and you do that. You don't get closure by having contact again. Now, I do think it's possible for exes after many years, if it's not terribly charged, they can have contact. But if it has to be secret, you know you're going into a bad territory. You're sort of dragging yourself into a morally compromised position. And just take it from me, like when you're trying to heal from trauma, you really can't afford to be morally compromised. And I learned that from alcoholics. To get sober, they have to really clear up their moral, errors. And that's how they do it. And I really took a page from that, and I cleared up my moral errors, and wow, my skin changed, my posture changed. I could look people in the eye again. Like, I really changed when I no longer felt ashamed or guilty about how I was running my life. I still make mistakes all the time, but as a rule, I tend to correct them as quickly as possible and apologize to people I've hurt as quickly as possible. I don't want to make claims of I'm so perfect or anything. It's certainly not true, but I've learned a thing or two about how you can really wreck your life, and it's through sneaky behavior and grandiose beliefs that somebody you don't really know very well is really the answer to your life. It does point to that you have an idea in your mind of who you could be under better circumstances. I'm not of the school of thought that says, that's just a projection of yourself. No, I guess that could be true, but I think that's oversimplifying and it demeans what it is. Sometimes through a connection with another person, they may not be the right person for you, but there's a connection there that gives you a glimpse of the divine. And you see something higher and better that reminds you that you always knew you were meant for something greater. And so many people, their tragic story is that they invested all of the source of that in this person, from high school or whatever. And it doesn't tend to turn out well. It doesn't tend to give you what you thought it would. And I get plenty of letters from people who left and they did the thing, and the person would have them and they left, and then it was a relationship like all others with the usual problems, and that usually whatever your pattern was in relationships, and for you it sounds like you're a doormat or you're completely taking the other person for granted. Like somebody has to be in a state of painful limerence for a relationship to have energy for you. That is a trauma pattern. That's a trauma pattern. That's how you know. So I will remain agnostic about what the purpose of your relationship with this woman from the past is. But because she's married and because, as I understand it, she's cooling the jets with you, please let her have space to do that. It's very wrong to try to tear somebody out of their marriage. Don't do it. If she's interested, she will let you know. And in the meantime, because you're hoping to be told this, you're keeping a terrible secret. But I still say, don't tell your wife. Don't tell her things unless you're actually walking out the door, because it will hurt her. And I know there are people who are like, oh, you have to be open and honest. Yeah, I disagree. I think that one of the most important things we can do is consider other people's feelings. We can't control our thoughts and feelings. And for the record, we can't really control who we love. And so until we have made a decision about what we're going to do, at least for the foreseeable future, why drag people along through our mental chaos that doesn't really mean anything because we don't know? Because we don't know. That's my opinion. So hopefully she is busy figuring out getting her ducks in a row so she's prepared to live as a single person. Who knows? Maybe she will make the first move to leave the marriage, because this is going to be very hard. I would imagine it's pretty harsh for her, and maybe she'd like to leave. And I shouldn't be surprised, Ed, that if she did, you would suddenly start to see that she was so great. Just because what you're describing is something that happens. It seems to be an expression of a trauma-driven attachment wound that a lot of people have, that we kind of eroticize abandonment. And by eroticize, I mean eros, not just sex, but love. Like, the one who abandoned me, that was such a great love. And it's a trick of the mind, isn't it? It's a trauma wound. And so I do think that is, I know what you mean when you say trauma bond. A trauma bond is where there's intermittent reinforcement, but that's not quite what's going on here. It sounds like she kind of got involved with you for a bit and then pulled away. So Ed, I would hate for you to lose this wife who loves you. And I would love for you to heal enough that you could show up lovingly and kind of open your heart. And that can happen sometimes with trauma healing. What I'm going to suggest to you is to solve the very first problem is you need friends and you need fun in your life. It sounds like this involvement with the group from high school, that it was fun and you had activities and you had other people to hang out with. No wonder it was such a joy. You need that in your life. And I understand it won't be her. It won't be this person who's so important to you, but it's still important. It's still important that you have fun and connection to other people. You mustn't let this go or have the false idea that one person can make your whole life like that. It doesn't work like that. Couples have a lot of problems around one of them kind of like making the other one their whole life. That does not tend to work. It's an unstable arrangement. So whatever happens, you don't have to make anything happen right now, but I would really encourage you to increase the level of joy and connection in your life. You could do that perhaps with a 12-step program. You had an alcoholic parent, you totally qualify. And you could do it in my programs if you like, the courses, the membership. We have a lot of stuff going on where people connect. We have daily practice calls several times a day with the peers, and I'm there every 2 weeks doing coaching calls daily, and then every 2 weeks doing daily practice calls. We have a lot of community, and people support each other, and now they're posting on Facebook vacations they take together and things. People make friends if they choose to, not everybody. But I hope you'll take positive steps towards your own healing, woman or no woman, wife or no wife. When someone is romantically obsessed with you, they usually will try to hide it. But make no mistake, you can feel it. And if you're not into them, it does not feel good. Limerence is the word for when a person is so infatuated with someone who isn't interested in them that it becomes like an addiction, very destructive for their life. And it takes them out of important things about real life, present time issues. But it's also harmful to the person who is the limerent object. And that's the word for a person someone else is limerent on. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Romy, and she writes, "Dear crappy childhood fairy, I'm trying to salvage a very dear friendship. I've been friends with H for nearly a decade. All right, I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things that I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's read all the way through Romy's letter and see what's going on. Okay. She says, while it started out with him being interested in me romantically, that never panned out. There is a bit of an age difference, and it started at a time when I was super avoidant. So I basically just ignored his increasing text messages until he quit contacting me. We run in the same social circles, so at some point we encountered each other out and about. I'm an extremely extroverted person," she says. "My profession requires me to interact with a lot of people from different walks of life. I'm also very eclectic with my interests, so I find it easy to strike up a conversation with just about anyone. I guess this led to us conversing again and eventually forming a friendship with clear boundaries. Over the course of our friendship, I've been in dating relationships and some years ago began seeing my current significant other. H knows him. We've hung out together many times. I recently became engaged. My friendship with H was such. Maybe every 2 weeks or once a month, he might text and ask if I wanted to meet up with him and some other friends to go to a game, or if there was something going on in town, if I was going and wanted to catch up over a drink. Pretty standard logistical messages of who, what, when kind of stuff. I'm not saying the conversations never got deeper. Usually, how's work? How's the family? There were points where we both had family members experiencing a major health crisis, and we would discuss that. We don't touch. I'm not a touchy person to begin with, and as a woman with several male friends, I believe this can send the wrong signal. So no hugs, no placing a hand on the shoulder or arm, etc. Over the course of the last 2 months, H has begun to text me with increasing frequency, and now it's always, I hope your day is going well, I hope work is less hectic for you, and random crap, I guess, just to get a response from me. This isn't the norm. He started to send me lengthy messages during working hours, and instead of every 2 weeks, it's every 2 days. He's continuing offering to help me with the major life events I have going on. Common form, yeah, we talk about that. With the major life events I have going on, and even so far as to offer to cancel his plans months from now to do so, and apologizing continuously for, well, just being, I guess. Some of it has been really manipulative, I think, to get to see me and find out what I'm doing. Some of it has been downright bizarre. I started to feel really uncomfortable with him, which I hate. Some of my friends noticed and said they think he's in love with me. I started researching and found limerence, which I understand can be triggered by an engagement. I've decided to cut back on contact, try to make life as boring as possible, and limit in-person interaction. In retrospect, I think this has been going on longer than I realized. H used to tell me about women he was talking to. There's been none of that lately. Really not much of what he's doing with friends either. Yeah, sounds like limerence. I really do not want H pining away for me, waiting for me to text him back or be available to spend time with him. He's a very good guy and deserves to enjoy his hobbies and find someone he can be with, even if I were not engaged. He and I are not compatible in any way. I'm a very independent person, and the constant texting is suffocating. We also have very different core values. I also hate to think that I'm overthinking this, that I found limerence in every interaction since is just confirmation bias. No, it's not. Am I way off base here? If I'm his limerent object, is there anything I can do to save the friendship? I feel like I'm hurting him no matter what I do, and I really do not want to hurt my friend. I should add, my fiance knows all about what's going on. He's also worried H is going through something. Thanks for your time. All right, Romy, this is, I can help with this. There's a pretty clear-cut answer, and you probably dread it. I know you didn't want to hear it, but you're not being kind by allowing this relationship to continue. It seems like it because to you, this is a friend, he's a nice person. You can see he's just sort of going, tipping over into a bad direction here. But because this has been going on 10 years, it's really clear this is not going to get better. Like, given an opportunity to stay in contact with you, the limerent tendency will just keep activating. Now, if he wrote to me, which he hasn't, but if he did, I would tell him, you're not going to want to hear this, but you need to cut contact with this woman. She's your friend, she's been nice to you, but what you're doing here is cutting yourself off from the opportunity to find real love, and probably a lot of other things too. Limerence is it's almost like right up there with a hardcore drug addiction. It will keep your consciousness occupied, hijacked, always trying to get the next hit. And the hit for a person with limerence is hope. He's trying to get hope, like that he's going to see you, that somehow he'll think of the right way to tip his hand without tipping his hand, and you'll go, oh my gosh, I realized all along that it's you that I loved. And that is the hope of a limerent. But a limerent never actually comes right out and says, listen, I just have to tell you I'm in love with you, and before you marry this other guy, I just have to get this on the table. In limerence, people won't do that. And you know why? Because they already know the answer. They just can't face it. And so the hope, it feels like what's keeping them going. They feel that they need that hope, or life is just going to be too bleak. But that's how people feel about heroin when they're addicted to it. I just can't let it go. And letting go has a very painful transition phase. And then there's freedom. And then you can't go back to it. And I encourage people with limerence that's like dug in like this. It's not just a little thing for 2 weeks, that it's got to go. And also, because you're getting married, even though your husband or your future husband, your fiance, seems to be supportive and caring about each party here, it is better for your marriage not to have entanglements with anybody who has feelings for you. That's just, it robs your emotional availability in ways that you can't necessarily see, but that can be felt, that nervous systems recognize. And that's one of the biggest things that people can do to clear up their emotional availability and make their light shine bright, their cab light, what I call the cab light. To be truly to feel like an available person is to end entanglements where one of you has attraction or desire to rekindle. And, some people want to keep those going because they're kind of fun and they're harmless. And I don't object, but if it's causing problems, I suspect your friend H here is, his life is quite empty. He said he doesn't even talk to women. He's pulling away from friends. It just sounds like a drug addiction, right? And in a way it is. It's getting a hit of hope that keeps it going. And it's sad. Limerence, I've heard there's a genetic component, but largely what I notice is it falls on people. It's a tendency in some people who were really emotionally neglected as kids. I see it a lot in kids of alcoholics, or kids who just didn't get paid attention to or cared for or guided. And so you get so good at seeing love where there is no love that you end up with some distorted perception in adulthood. You have too good of a imagination there that the signals that you're getting are secret code for, but it's you I really love. And so that's the hope. There's going to be a reciprocation. And, some people spend years in that space, and that's tragic. It's better to be sad for a while and move on and open up one's life to actual love. So that's the gift you can give him by ending contact. So here's what you do. I've had to do that a couple times with people. I've been on both ends of this. I've had it done to me. I've had to do it to others. And you just say, I need to end this friendship right now. I feel that there's a romantic energy, and that's not healthy for where I'm going in my life. And so thank you for being such a good friend all these years, but I can't spend time with you anymore. I wish you the best. So you break up with the friend. I know it sounds hard, but you'd be surprised how good it feels when it's done. Because what he's doing right now, let's be honest, it's uncomfortable for you. It's encroaching. It's invasive. Your intuition knows there's some sort of imaginary thing going on with you, and that feels creepy. So even good people do this, but it's not good for anybody. So I encourage you to end it as kindly as you can, and then open up your life to your marriage, and maybe do a little gut check on any other friendships with male friends that might be tinged with the sort of energy that is keeping anybody stuck. Some people are serial limerent objects, and that can sometimes be a sign of something else again, where, serial limerent objects love to inspire limerence in others and give them hope, but not deliver the goods, not actually be with them, because they feed off of it. So I don't hear you doing that, but just, for anybody listening, both parties can be harmed and go into a very negative state over this. It's better to have our relationships be clean and straightforward, no subterfuge, no secret agenda, honest feelings expressed. And I get it, in a new courtship or something, you don't have to run out and declare your feelings. That might be inappropriate. There's a time for everything, but 10 years into a friendship is well overdue. Your mind plays tricks on you when you fall in love with a long-distance loner who says flat out they don't want a relationship. This is like an absent character. They're present only as an electronic voice or a digital image, but they're never a real person at your side, living with you, going day to day with you from this experience to that experience. And this can be the perfect blank canvas for a limerent fantasy. If only we could be together, right? That's a limerent thought, never doing the math to understand that the person clearly, openly, strongly tells you that it will never happen. So who is avoidant here? My letter today is from a woman I'll call Sasha, and she writes, "Hello, Anna. I want your help to understand the situation I am in because I feel very confused about it and I can't make sense of it. I don't know if I'm deluding myself or if my intuition is right. So I've got the fairy pencil. I'm going to go in and circle some things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's see what's going on with Sasha here." So she says, "About 2 years ago, I met a man at an online school for self-development and healing from trauma. He had a dismissive, avoidant attachment style, while I had already done a lot of healing, and I considered myself now to have an earned, secure attachment style. I had learned a lot about the dismissive avoidant style. So dismissive avoidant is one of the attachment styles that is fundamentally insecure, but it avoids people, and it's a person who avoids intimacy, doesn't want to talk about promises, doesn't want to talk about feelings, doesn't want to commit. That's the tendency. And it's on a spectrum. And then dismissive is the part where they're just kind of dismissive about it. They're just like, well, too bad. I had learned a lot about this style because 2 of my previous partners had this issue, and I poured my heart to try to understand them and improve the relationships. The relationships still didn't work out, but I felt a great appreciation and care about the challenges and qualities of people with this kind of attachment style. I thought it could work well for me if I found a dismissive avoidant partner who was willing to heal and become securely attached. Uh-oh. Okay, I can see what's going to happen right there. We'll come back to it. I was very attracted to this new man I met because he was so dedicated to his own healing. It seemed to have maximum priority in his life, and he said he wanted to overcome the intergenerational trauma from his family and become a good father and husband in the future. We became friends and started having regular video calls that went on for hours at a time. We talked about what we wanted in life, and the more I got to know him, the more I saw our values, goals, preferred lifestyle, how we wanted to raise our future children, all aligned very, very much. I could not believe someone like that actually existed, and that I could have found someone so compatible with my own values. However, we lived in different countries and different continents, but he does not live in his country of origin. He moved a few years ago and has only been living in that region he's in now for about 4 years. He's 32, I'm 39. After a few months, I told him I had romantic feelings for him, and I told him I thought we were very compatible. To my surprise, he said he was open to talking about us having a romantic relationship, when he had previously mentioned he didn't want long-distance relationships. But it seems he had assumed in his mind that I would be moving to be with him, but this was not possible for me due to health reasons, and I told him so. After that, he completely shut down the idea of us being partners and refused to consider moving himself, though I tried to come up with alternatives. He told me we could continue to be friends, and I accepted it. I really tried to move on from my romantic feelings for him and see him only as a friend. Well, that right there. Okay, we're going to come back to that. But it didn't work. Of course not. Over time, he started to invite me to video call more and more often until we were seeing each other every morning and evening almost every day, hours at a time. I left it up to him to initiate contact because he was the one who needed more space than me, and I could accommodate that. We built deep trust with each other over time and provided each other with a safe space to explore our feelings and be vulnerable. I held space for him. Okay, there's all these psychology terms here. They're a little disturbing to me. I'll tell you why in a minute. I held space for him for hours while he cried. He told me about his deepest traumas, and he felt safe enough to share in a way he never did with anyone else. He told me he never felt so understood and loved. When he saw me, he told me he felt great joy, and sometimes he even mentioned it felt like heaven. The way he looked at me and these things he said all indicated to me that he was in love with me, but whenever I mentioned it, he denied it and said he had already told me we could not be more than friends. But his pull toward me was very strong. We tried to put up boundaries and see each other less often, but then after a while, we ended back to seeing each other every day by his own initiative. I said yes because I felt so happy to spend time with him. I wanted it too. We had few conflicts because we understood, yeah, you wanted it, okay. We had few conflicts because we understood each other so well and we had compatible values. Well, not at all actually, but okay. And when a conflict did arise, we used the tools we both had learned to overcome it relatively easily and quickly. I never knew a relationship could be so joyful and easy. Joyful and easy. It sounds miserable. You're getting your heart broken. We grew together and brought out the best in each other. I felt free to be myself with him. I felt accepted and loved for who I am, and he said he felt the same. I was everything he said he wanted in a partner, yet he didn't want me to be his partner. I was so confused. I'm so confused word. In 90% of the time when it shows up in these letters, it's denial. So we'll talk about this. He told me he never had a romantic relationship before and had only been in love once in his life with a woman who rejected him. They never dated. He was still grieving that after more than 3 years. He said before doing this healing work, he couldn't even imagine living with a partner because he needed his space and independence. Recently, the desire to have a partner and live with a partner had become very strong for him. After 1.5 years of this going back and forth, well, not really going back and forth, just going in one direction. Him pulling me close and telling me we should be only friends when I pointed it out to him that he was treating me as his girlfriend. I decided that it was best for us to go no contact and move on because I could not stand it anymore when he started talking about wanting to find a partner who was not me and potentially dating other women. It's been 6 months since we broke up our friendship and we've been in absolute no contact for 3 months. I still miss him every day, and I remember all the beautiful moments that we shared and how peaceful and joyful and safe I felt with him, right, except when you were miserable and longing and feeling confused and used. I still remember all the things he said that made me think he was in love with me and how he kept denying it. All right, we're going to come back to that after 1.5 years you had to try to imagine it, and because he never told you that, okay? and how he kept denying it. I can't understand how he could walk away from a relationship like this and imagine he can find another amazing relationship easily just because he wants a woman who lives close to him when it's not even his country of origin and he's only lived there for a few years. I've been looking all my life, working so hard to heal myself and to make relationships work, and I never found anything comparable to what I had with him. I don't think I will find it again. Being realistic, I tried meeting new men, but they were disappointing and behaved in unhealthy ways that I'm not willing to tolerate anymore. I decided to look for a new partner because it just feels like a waste of my time and energy. I need your help to give me perspective. Am I just deluding myself here, thinking he's in love with me? When I asked him to give me a list of reasons why he didn't want to be my partner because I was having difficulty moving on, he refused. He never gave me a straight answer and got triggered and defensive whenever I tried to talk about it. The only clear reason was the distance, but to me, that does not seem like reason enough to give up on the love of your life. This is an issue we could overcome if we worked together, but he didn't want to. I just feel so confused and can't make any sense of this situation. How do I move on? How do I open myself up to love someone new again, even when this beautiful relationship that was more than I ever hoped for also didn't work out? It all just feels pointless and hopeless. I hope you can help me. And that is from Sasha. Okay, how sad that you think this relationship was more than you could ever hope for. I'm going to start right out by saying, girl, you need to hope for more. You need to hope for a physically present partner who is really into you and wants to be with you and says so. So I'm just going to set the bar there. That's what you didn't have. Anything less is not going to do. It's just not going to do. I know some people meet at a distance, and very quickly you can determine if this is going somewhere. And I know people who have successfully dated online for a while, and then one of them flies to see the other and gets an apartment nearby so they can spend some time. Like, it's a big deal to try to actually do courtship long distance. And so you have to be very serious about it. And both people have to completely have the same intention for it. And if it goes on longer than 6-8 weeks with no intention for that, it's not a thing. It's just not a thing. You know, we could probably spend more time unpacking it and figuring out what's what if people live in the same town and you're young and you have all the time in the world. So, Sasha, I just want to say one of the core misunderstandings you have here is that you thought he needed healing and you are already healed and you consider yourself to have a secure attachment style. And I would just say the writing's on the wall, my friend. You don't have that. You're attaching really hard to somebody who said over and over again, I'm not into you, and who was basically your emotional vampire, just using all your devotion to feed himself without giving you what obviously was called for in that type of relationship, of you giving him that. Now, I don't really want to talk about him being a bad guy. I want to talk about you being limerent on somebody and using all this psychological jargon to make it sound healthy and wonderful and gaslighting yourself that it's the most wonderful relationship ever. This is not a wonderful relationship. It's a vampire you signed up for. Okay, so you've been going to this program, and I just tell you, like, when I hear online school for personal development and trauma healing, like, that could be really good, but if people are trying to date in that environment, there's going to be a lot of people who have a lot of trauma. There's a lot of limerent, weird stuff that goes on in personal development gatherings of any kind, and online is like a double element where limerence and sort of deception and, you know, we can build people up into something they're not, that we would figure out very quickly if we saw them. You'd be able to feel because what was going on here is he was obviously very avoidant. Okay, fine. But you believing that, but if we would just work together, he would love me. That's whoops. Even people who are totally available, if they're not into you, it's not happening. That's the problem. I'm being very tough fairy with you because I'm trying to get through your idea that you're so healed and what's wrong with him that he doesn't see that you're the perfect match. So because you will give your entire life to somebody who tells you over and over again, I'm not into you in that way, and then you sit there and hold space for them, as you say, that is psychobabble for just sitting there being a sponge, a codependent sponge for somebody. Don't do that. He's not that for you. Or maybe he was, but I have some workarounds you can use so that this never happens again. So let me get to that. Let me just come through this stuff. The video calls were an hour at a time. Were hours at a time. They went on for hours, even though he said, I'm not interested in you in that way. And you're like, that's okay. I'll give you hours of my time every day at your disposal and on your schedule. Well, he doesn't seem like a great character for doing this to another person, but I just want to say, like, you kept signing up for it, and in your mind, you're just thinking, surely if I do this for him, he will love me, and if he keeps coming back for more, it means he's in love with me and wants to be with me. But you've got to listen to what people say, first of all. You know, they say, look at what they do, not just what they say. But when it comes to saying, I'm really like in love with you and I want to be with you, that doesn't work two ways. You know, people have to be saying that for it to be true. They have to be saying it for it to be true. If they can't say it yet, they're not ready to say it yet. Because it's not something they're prepared to deal with or act on. But the fact that he went looking for another relationship is flat out evidence that, like, he really wasn't kidding you. He wasn't interested in that. But he was happy to have a friend who would be like a free therapist for him. I'm very glad you outed yourself. You told him how you felt so that you could move the story forward and not just be stuck in a fantasy. And then you decided to be friends. So I used to have this kind of messy relationship in my life too. And it was a miserable many years that this went on. And it stopped 100% when I did a couple of things. And one of them was I did not stay friends in any relationship with a man where one of us had feelings and the other didn't. That's a myth that you can just carry on and revert to friendship on that. Maybe after 10 years, maybe after 20 years, but even then, who knows? It is not healthy. It's an avoidance strategy of your own, and that's kind of what I want to call you out on. You have become the perfect girlfriend for somebody who's totally avoidant. You're online, you're there for him, you adore him. He has to give nothing, no promises, and when he gets the whim, he can go for somebody else. It's like the perfect girlfriend. So I use a word here called crap fit, meaning we fit ourselves to crap, to unacceptable situations or unacceptable people. You like the person, but the situation was he just, he wasn't going to give it back to you. It was unrequited love that went on and on. And so you fit yourself to that by just, I saw the escalation of the psychological words, of this being a meaningful thing, but I don't see it as sparkly as you do. I see it as a very sad loss of your emotional energy, the great love that you have to give to somebody for the future that you want. And this thing where you had the same values, I would just say a core value that's totally, the number one value in a relationship is like, I want to be with you. I can be with you. I will move to be with you. You are the one I want to be with. So I don't know if you want to categorize that as a value, but it's the core one. It doesn't really matter what is like-minded when it comes to romantic feelings. When you have that feeling for somebody, it categorically changes the nature of the relationship. And then when you play along that you're their friend, it's basically, this is going to be hard, a strong word, but it's manipulation, thinking that if you just play along, they will come around, that you can sort of trick them into it. And even when they say it's not what they want. So, trying to push them into it is not really respecting them, if you can believe that. Like, I think that when we're in this situation, we feel exploited, but that's not really what's going on. Yes, he's using you, and he's taking advantage consciously or unconsciously of your willingness to basically put up with any dribble that he'll give you, any little crumb. So you had a few conflicts, you understood each other, you repaired things. So you got confused when he said he didn't want you as a partner. But that is an unequivocal statement. It's not a confusing statement. You got confused because you had this fantasy going at the same time that was overlaying the reality. And so it is hard, when you're in that's limerence, when it's very strong like that. Limerence is a infatuation or intense obsession with somebody that overrides reality. It can become like an addiction. So you weren't really in reality. You kept seeing love where there was no love. It was certainly a kind of love, but it wasn't the kind of love that you kept believing you were receiving. And he had never had a romantic relationship before. So at 32, that is a sign of great avoidance. He said before doing this healing work, he couldn't imagine it, but then he did want to do it, which is a perfectly reasonable goal for somebody who goes through a big program for healing trauma, is to become more open to a relationship. But you say after 1.5 years of this going back and forth, but the thing is, it just sounds like he never wavered on saying he didn't want a relationship. He just acted like somebody very close to you. But that's why I use the word vampire. It's a lovely energy when somebody adores you and thinks you're so amazing and, fits their schedule to you. You always have this companionship on your terms. And that's a vampire. A relationship is two-way. They show up for you. They're with you on your birthday. They care when you're sad. They drive you to the doctor if you're going to need a ride home. They're with you. It's a whole different thing. So he wasn't treating you as his girlfriend. It was like this other thing while he thought about finding a girlfriend. I could sure see why it felt like that for a long time, but I'm really proud of you for asking him directly and getting your answer, and then you just got stuck when you had the answer. So yeah, now you haven't had contact. Good move. That is what you do about a relationship like this. Still miss him. That's understandable. And you remember all the beautiful moments that you shared, how peaceful, joyful, and safe I felt with him. Okay, you're remembering some of the moments. What you're glossing over is the moments where you were in emotional agony, that he didn't return your love, that he was trying to meet another woman. It wasn't joyful. It was unfulfilling. It was sad. It was a slap in the face. That's the trouble with unrequited love. It feels awful. It feels good at first because it's a little bit of a respite as long as you have hope. But it turns into limerence, like toxic limerence. Limerence is always toxic, but it turns into that when hope becomes the dope. Hope is the addiction. I just know there's hope, and then we'll start to go, no, I hear hope in this. No, I think there was like a hidden meaning when he said he wasn't interested. And, no shame, because I just know you were neglected as a kid. This is what we do. This is what we do. We end up with a superpower to see love where there is no love. But in adulthood, this is a terrible way to go, and it blocked you from finding real love, like real actual love with somebody who loves you and is totally excited to be with you. You're saying you tried to meet new men, but they were disappointing and behaved in unhealthy ways. All right, so what's happening now is what happens to like most of us, and you're right at a precipice of your healing. And the question for you in your healing is, can you get past this idea that men just accidentally show up as like unhealthy and unavailable? Or can you see that actually you are choosing them? You are falling for them, choosing them, investing your emotional energy in them. The alternative is you shut it down as soon as you realize it's not going anywhere, and you continue to date and see if you can find what will work for you. Now, what happens with trauma is we sort of lose this capacity to dream of our future. We just don't know what we want. And I ask people with trauma, like, well, what would be your ideal partner? And there is almost always a long silence. It's almost impossible to articulate, let alone envision what we want early in healing. So as much healing work as you've done in the relationship department, I think there's a ways to go here, happily. It doesn't have to be like this ever again. What you do is you set up knowing clearly what you need, somebody who can be with you, is into you, attracted, available, and then, maybe be pretty Victorian about friendships with men where you're online every day with them. They knew something in those days. You don't get your emotional energy all invested in somebody if they haven't sort of declared that they're interested in you. That goes for either gender. You need to know if somebody's interested in you. And occasionally relationships will come together mutually after one person was reticent at first, but usually not when the other person pursued them, for a year and a half. So that's usually not how it happens. So you have to use your discernment to actually just like let go of people if they're not that. Make good friends, close friends with women. Make those your friends. So that those are the people to have safety and joy with. Men, because that's who you're attracted to, you gotta kind of treat them a little differently. And I totally believe you if you have some male friends, but good, stable friendships between men and women don't have this element in them. They can't withstand like constant contact. It's gonna turn into what you're dealing with here and break down and have to go to no contact, which is good. I would encourage you, take your no contact further. I'm glad you wrote to me. If you want to use my daily practice so that twice a day you have a place to put all your angsty feelings about the memory of him and what you miss, that's a good thing to do. It's a very specific practice. It's a free course that's always available down in the description section or on my website at crappychildhoodfairy.com. And I lead free calls every 2 weeks to do the techniques together with anybody who wants to come and answer questions. This is what saved my life. This is what gradually got me out of the dysfunctional relationship patterns too. And so that I could marry like a real guy who really loves me. And we've been married now for 10 years and together for almost 16. So that's a whole different thing from what I used to put myself through. So one last thing, you said that he refused to give you an answer about why he didn't want to be with you. And this is often the case. And certainly an avoidant is definitely not going to tell you, but I'll tell you what it was. For one reason or another, he wasn't into you. He didn't have romantic feelings for you. And when we don't have that for another person, no matter how wonderful they are, the relationship can't move forward. There it is. That's what it is. And people out of kindness or avoidance don't want to tell us, explicitly that that's the case. They don't feel it. That's what it is. And that is your answer. His actions are your answer. And his seeking a new woman to have a relationship with using you as his friend for that, which you said you were, is your answer completely. He does want a relationship, but just not with you. So the sooner you can just embrace that and go, okay, that's why it felt the way it felt, and you can start to let the lessons in. It's hard to face, but until you do, you're kind of destined to keep repeating this pattern. You can change this pattern, but you have to recognize the signs of limerence when it's happening. You might think that you're ready for real love, but if you're pouring all your emotional and romantic energy into someone who is stringing you along, not available, and has been clear they don't want a relationship, it's time to wake up and recognize that you are putting a giant wall between you and the possibility of love. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Carlene, and she writes, "Hello, Anna. I want your help to understand the situation I'm in because I feel very confused about it and I can't make sense of it. I don't know if I'm deluding myself or if my intuition is right." All right, I've got my fairy pencil here. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's go through Carlene's letter and see what's going on. She says, about 2 years ago, I met a man at an online school for self-development and healing from trauma. He had a dismissive avoidant attachment style. She abbreviates it DA. While I had already done a lot of healing and I considered myself now to have an earned, secure attachment style. Now, attachment styles, if anybody doesn't know, it's sort of a philosophy of what happens to the way that we have relationships as a result of the type of relationship we had with our mother or caregiver when we were a kid. And so dismissive avoidant is somebody who pulls away a lot, doesn't like to commit, feels uncomfortable with the expression of emotion, perhaps. And then our letter writer here says that she's done a lot of work and now considers herself to have an earned, secure attachment style. Secure is the ideal of what a person can be if they weren't abandoned a lot or neglected a lot, and they just feel kind of okay in relationships and pretty good at spotting red flags. But I would guess that the reason she had to work on it is because it was some kind of insecure attachment style, which can be kind of like putting up with a lot of bad things, chasing after somebody. All right. I had learned a lot about the dismissive avoidance style because 2 of my previous partners had this issue, and I poured my heart to try to understand them and improve the relationships. The relationships still didn't work out, but I felt a great appreciation and care about the challenges and qualities of people with this kind of attachment style. And we're going to come back to this. I thought it could work well for me if I found a dismissive avoidant partner who was willing to heal and become securely attached. I was very attracted to this new man I met because he was so dedicated to his own healing. It seemed to have maximum priority in his life, and he said he wanted to overcome the intergenerational trauma from his family and become a good father and husband in the future. We became friends and started having regular video calls that went on for hours at a time. We talked about what we wanted in life, and the more I got to know him, the more I saw our values, goals, preferred lifestyle, how we wanted to raise our future children, all aligned very much. I could not believe someone like that actually existed, and that I could have found someone so compatible with my own values. However, we lived in different countries and different continents, but he does not live in his country of origin. He moved a few years ago, and he's only been living in the region he is in now for about 4 years. He's 32, I'm 39. After a few months, I told him I had romantic feelings for him, and I told him I thought that we were very compatible. To my surprise, he said he was open to talking about us having a romantic relationship, when he had previously mentioned he didn't want long-distance relationships. But it seemed he had assumed in his mind that I would be moving to be with him, but this was not possible for me due to health reasons, and I told him so. After that, he completely shut down the idea of us being partners and refused to consider moving himself, though I tried to come up with alternatives. He told me we could continue to be friends, and I accepted it. I really tried to move on from my romantic feelings for him and see him only as a friend, but it didn't work. And over time, he started to invite me to video call more and more often until we were seeing each other every morning and evening, almost every day, hours at a time. I left it up to him to initiate contact because he was the one who needed more space than me, and I could accommodate that. We built deep trust with each other over time and provided each other with a safe space to explore our feelings and be vulnerable. I'm circling all these words, and I'm going to come back and tell you why. I held space for him for hours while he cried. He told me about his deepest traumas, and he felt safe enough to share in a way he never did with anyone else. He told me he never felt so understood and loved. When he saw me, he told me he felt great joy, and sometimes he even mentioned it felt like heaven. The way he looked at me and these things he said all indicated to me he was in love with me. But whenever I mentioned it, he denied it and said he had already told me we could not be more than friends. But his pull toward me was very strong. We tried to put up boundaries and see each other less often, but then after a while, we ended back to seeing each other every day by his own initiative. I said yes because I felt so happy to spend time with him. I wanted it too. We had few conflicts because we understood each other well, and we had compatible values, and when a conflict did arise, we used the tools and we both had learned to overcome it relatively easily and quickly. I never knew a relationship could be so joyful and easy. We grew together and brought out the best in each other. I felt free to be myself with him. I felt accepted and loved for who I am, and he said he felt the same. I was everything he said he wanted in a partner, yet he didn't want me to be his partner. I was so confused. That word, okay? He told me he never had a romantic relationship before and had only been in love once in his life with a woman who rejected him. They never dated. He was still grieving that after more than 3 years. He said before doing this healing work, he couldn't even imagine living with a partner because he needed his space and independence, but recently the desire to have a partner and live with a partner had been very strong for him. After 1.5 years of this going back and forth, him pulling me close and telling me we should be only friends, when I pointed it out to him that he was treating me as his girlfriend, I decided that it was best for us to go no contact and move on because I could not stand it anymore when he started talking about wanting to find a partner who was not me and potentially dating other women. It's been 6 months since we broke up our friendship, and we've been in absolute no contact for 3 months. I still miss him every day, and I remember all the beautiful moments we shared and how peaceful, joyful, and safe I felt with him. We're going to come back to that. I still remember all the things he said that made me think he was in love with me and how he kept denying it. I can't understand how he could walk away from a relationship like this and imagine he can find another amazing relationship easily just because he wants a woman who lives close to him when it's not even his country of origin and he's only lived there for a few years. I've been looking all my life, working so hard to heal myself and to make relationships work. And I never found anything comparable to what I had with him. Really. I don't think I will find it again, being realistic. Honestly, I hope you don't. because you're missing the forest for the trees here, but we'll get back to that. I tried meeting new men, but they were disappointing and behaved in unhealthy ways that I'm not willing to tolerate anymore. I decided to stop looking for a new partner because it just feels like a waste of my time and energy. I need your help to give me perspective. Am I just deluding myself here thinking he is in love with me? When I asked him to give me a list of reasons why he didn't want to be my partner because I was having difficulty moving on, he refused to give you a list of reasons. He never gave me a straight answer and got triggered and defensive whenever I tried to talk about it. The only clear reason was the distance, but to me that does not seem like a reason enough to give up the love of your life. This is an issue we could overcome if we worked together, but he didn't want to. I just feel so confused. Confused comes up again. And I can't make sense of this situation. How do I move on? How do I open myself to love someone new again when even this beautiful relationship that was more than I ever hoped for also didn't work out? It all just feels pointless and hopeless. I hope you can help me. Carlene. All right. Carlene, I can help you. I think you're not seeing it. Your perspective is hurt right now by what you've been going through. You've been in a deep, deep state of crap fitting. Crap fitting is where you fit yourself to an unacceptable situation or person or both. And it's something that we learn to do in childhood sometimes. It was a survival mechanism then, but it's a guarantee that we cannot get real love now if we cannot heal from it. So I'm going to bring the focus onto what you're doing here. I think you're lovely, and I think it's all going to turn out well for you when you can start to face reality about this relationship and let it in and let it teach you what it is that you need to learn to actually move on to a good relationship. So you had said a couple years ago you met this guy at an online school for self-development and healing from trauma. And I get a funny feels about this because in theory you could meet great friends, potentially a partner at these things. But so often people who are drawn to a program that's about healing trauma are traumatized. And you present yourself as like, well, I'm really healed and I have secure attachment. But I'm just here to tell you, Carlene, well, because you're really into this guy who won't have you and doesn't want you, it just seems like you don't have secure attachment. I would just say it's okay not to have resolved that yet. It's not failure, but where you are right now is insecurely attached and willing to jump through hoops and tie up your whole life, giving unpaid, unlicensed therapy to a guy who wants nothing more from you. And what a great deal it is for him. I'm always scoffing at that saying, why would the farmer buy the cow if he can get the milk for free? But if the milk is therapy, well, there you go. Why would he get help for himself when somebody will just listen to him and love everything he says and exalt it and think it's this amazing two-way relationship, right? But actually, you keep saying it was so whole and wonderful. And I'm just going to go through and read you other things you said that just contradict yourself there, which is why you feel confused, because you're having trouble. I guess it's called cognitive dissonance. You're having trouble facing the reality that this is a miserable situation for you. And you want to magical think it into this really great thing. And I think we often do that when we have trauma wounds. It's really common because we don't want to leave. We have to, if it's the writings on the wall, this relationship is not going anywhere. He's going to leave you for somebody else, right? And he's looking for somebody. He feels that he has your permission because you've been so cool about it. Like, that's okay, I understand. And seeing yourself as this healer of him. So I just want to tell you, you're showing lots of signs of codependent behavior, of like, if I could just get him to heal, meaning become the person who's in love with me, which is not the same as healing. Healing for him might be being honest that that's not how he feels, not getting into a relationship with somebody he doesn't feel that for. And it's one of the hardest things to hear when you're in love with somebody, that they don't feel that way about you, but it's the most important thing to hear. Reality is our friend. Reality is where we heal. Reality is where we solve our problems and find new, cool people who will be our friends and maybe one day a partner. They're only in reality. So when we're taking a vacation in this little pink cloud of how it might be with somebody, but it isn't that way, we're basically avoiding life. We're as good as, unconscious. We're unconscious and not fully engaged in our lives. And, it does have a way of like directing your thoughts. There were a couple things here too that I thought that were a little bit glossed over. So the one was he has a dismissive avoidant attachment style, and you thought that would be good because you could heal together. That sounds suspiciously like a fix people fantasy, which is really unhealthy. And for anybody who's on the receiving end of that, I would recommend to them, don't get together with somebody who's getting all the meaning in life from fixing you, from being like the angel of your healing. And having lived in California, Northern California most of my life, having been friends with or sometimes connected with these healing communities, this is such a common dynamic. And also where you said you're 39 and he's 32. Like, it's not unheard of that couples would have that kind of age difference when it's the woman who's older. It's not unheard of, but it's a huge risk probability that it's not going to work out for obvious reasons. So there's just all these red flags here. You know, he's much younger than you. He has a dismissive avoidant attachment style. It's just, you know, for me, what sounded confusing was that you're just like, I thought it was great that he had it. Like, dismissive avoidant is considered like one of the hardest attachment styles to try to connect to. If people aren't trying to overcome it and really love you and want to try, I would say chances are zero that it's going to accidentally turn into a great relationship. Yeah, I think so. You were attracted because he was so dedicated to his own healing. And I think I might just be speaking for myself and my own experiences with this. I think we can tend to spiritualize that sometimes, like spiritually bypass that we're doing healing. It's so profound. And then we can use that to like completely spackle over all the weird problems of stuff that's not working, like it's not a romantic relationship. He's healing. So we can talk ourselves into putting up with a lot of stuff that actually is maybe a red flag or worse, a no deal. So somebody who says, I'm not interested in a relationship with you, that's more than a red flag. The deal is off. And then at the point where they want to date somebody else and you're still hoping or feeling angry or ripped off or anything, my job today, as I see it, is to help you turn that and see that the person to be angry at is yourself for holding on to this situation with magical thinking. And then I don't want you to be angry at yourself another minute, but just to know like, oh, you're making that choice. You can unmake that choice. You can unmake that choice and set yourself free from this belief that you have to change other people to get loved. I can just tell you from experience what a sad belief that is, what an impossibility it is to have to change other people at all. And if you have to do that to get love, there are two things that aren't going to work. They're not going to change, and you're not going to get loved. But it's a trauma-driven behavior, and it's really common. It's really common. And many people here will understand, and I hope you can send some love to Carlene for the spell she's under right now. Just help her gently wake up out of it and see how the path to true love is out of this crap fit relationship. Isn't that funny? It always feels like somehow I've just got to find love in my current relationship. But the shortest path to real love is out of a relationship where you can never get what you want. The shortest path is free of that so that you're free to heal yourself, not other people, not to get enamored with somebody else's healing. In fact, if you're a person with trauma wounds, if you possibly can kind of match up with somebody who's not very wounded, that would be nice. That's just like that much less to work out between you. It's not how it always works, but I wouldn't aim for it. I wouldn't prize it as somebody who's, I love people who have been through trauma. And I would be so sad if I had to go back in time and try to make things work with people who were totally living their trauma, which I have before. I've been the person, and then I've tried to work it out with other people, and I feel exhausted when I even think about it. And I just want to tell you there's another way. You know, you can heal yourself, and you can get together with somebody who's more or less, good how they are, and you accept how they are, and there's not this vision of changing them and having to be their therapist and stuff for them to become available to you. They're available in present time, and they're really interested in you. That is a good situation. And yes, it's very good if they live in the same city as you. So you learned a lot about dismissive avoidance style because two of your previous partners had it, and you poured out your heart trying to understand them and improve the relationships. So I think that's very telling that you'd done it before and you just thought now they didn't work out. So then you said, but you felt a great appreciation and care about the challenges and qualities of people with this kind of attachment style. whatever you want to call their failure to love, care, or be present for you, I would stay away from people who don't love you, care about you, or present for you, and stop trying to be understanding and appreciative of those traits, of those hurtful traits, of you not getting love. Start to be understanding of your own traits, is that you're irresistibly drawn to people who can't love you. That's the thing that you need to be healing, and that's what needs your compassion. Because how can we possibly face these things if we don't simultaneously just get it? I know why I'm like this. It's really hard. I'm doing it again. I need some help. And I'll say it right here. Help for this type of thing requires both tools that are very directly useful to you to stay in reality and keep taking steps towards improvement, and then a community of people, women in this case, who are also on this path of healing and who will help you stay awake and who will befriend you and be your companion when having to face reality means having to give up and go home from somebody you've been dating, to withdraw and hang out with your friends. When you have friends to go back to and life is good with them, it's not so terrifying to face reality with a partner. And I do think that's, especially if you grew up with abuse and neglect, when you end up in this kind of crap fit relationship and you're not getting the love, it can feel so terrifying to leave because you have these abandonment wounds, that make it so emotionally frightening and intense and unbearable to deal with partings, even when you know it wasn't any good, even when you know, there's no way I'm going to get that love that I want in this relationship. I need to go, but you can't. So friends are what break that up. So tools to face reality and friends who are in reality with you. So not the kind of friends who are like, oh, they're just pigs, or, oh, people in your situation, there's a whole industry of people who will give them tarot card readings and psychic readings, and even therapists will do this sometimes, enabling a continued obsession with somebody for reasons that we can guess at, but are not healthy. It's not healthy to have somebody who makes money off of your continued attachment to somebody who doesn't want you. If that's going on in your life, it's time to stop two relationships. The person who you're paying for that and the person you're obsessing on. When you have somebody who loves you, it will gradually come together. It's probably going to be gradual, and it will be good. And that person will want to be with you, and they will want you romantically and sexually. That is what partner is. Yep, that's what it is. And if it's not that, it's a friend. And can I tell you something about structured dating? This thing where you guys were on video conference for hours twice a day is enmeshment. And enmeshment starts to cloud everybody's vision. And that's where you really lost your boundaries, I think, is trying to get all your needs met through this time on a little computer or phone, It's really sad, actually. I want you to stand outside of it and go, of course you can't get your needs met from a voice on a phone for hours a day. Think of all the things that you weren't doing with your hours that could have made your life happy and full rather than alone, right? I guess we can say that about any relationship that doesn't work out. But that is the extreme of avoidance. And sometimes I like to challenge people who are in pain because they've been with an avoidant, of being that you stayed so long and you kept enabling the situation, is it possible you're avoidant too? That what you like is to feel very passionately in love, but not ever have to really deal with somebody or take the risk of actually having face-to-face life. And you say, because of health reasons, and I don't understand, you couldn't go to him. And it's totally understandable that somebody doesn't want to change cities for a relationship that's new. It would have to be very serious. So you asked for perspective, and I can just see you had very strong feelings about him. He did not have those about you. He was just very, very happy to, I call this squeezing somebody like a lemon. I have videos about it, where you can macerate the lemon. You can, kind of work it up so that all the cells are ruptured. And when you cut that lemon open, it just pours out all the juice. You poured yourself into him. You used the word pour about your earlier relationships. That's for you. That life force in you, that thing that you have to give to another person, that's for you until you give it to somebody who is giving it reciprocally back to you. And we jump the gun on that sometimes when we have attachment wounds. We jump the gun. We're just like, I think this is love. It just really, it quacks like a duck. I just know it's love, even though he keeps saying, no, it's not. That's not what I want. But it must be. And I'll pour it out and somehow get it. So yeah, that's insecure attachment in action. You're so not alone with it, but that's why we have each other to go, oh no, that's you losing your life force and losing months of your life, pouring out that energy and time and attention that you could be using to build your health, your financial security, your friendships, your joy, your pursuits, your career, and of course, the possibility of finding that one person that you want to be with forever. So you can't do that when you're pouring all the lemon juice away down the drain. You don't register as available energetically, and healthy people detect that. They just know you're not available. So that's not going to come into your life. So the solution is you do what you did before. You cut it off, and you're going to have to feel those feelings, and you're going to need tools to cope with the feelings. They're just feelings. There's sadness about what might have been, not what was. And yeah, you're missing somebody that you used to talk to every day. But who was blocking you from having real full love in the physical dimension, in a home with you, making the bed together, gardening, going to the grocery store, spending birthdays together, deciding what you're going to do for Christmas. All of these things are the joys of real life. And to have that with another person is a real and beautiful thing. And marriage, if that's what it is you want, is a completion to that process for those who want it. And I think it's wonderful. Getting married is really great when it's the right person. So I hope you won't pour out any more of your life force. You have this precious thing to give. The love of you is a precious, precious thing. And there are many people who would like to have it and who would treat you very well to have it. Your job is to find out who are they? Who is that one? And that means kind of sitting back and letting information come to you.